What happens when a man exposing every lie is also living one of his own? Truth in its rawest forms is rarely found through logic alone. Sometimes it hides behind a smile, beneath the silence, or inside the crack of a story someone swears it's true. In a world where justice is expected to be clean and clinical, some understand that truth isn't something you find, but draw out. And sometimes the one drawing it out is just as broken as the people he's investigating. He doesn't carry a badge or a gun, he doesn't need to. His tools are suggestion, illusion, and a kind of psychological pressure that feels more like theater than policing. In The Mentalist, the performance is the investigation, and justice isn't handed down, it's coerced, cornered, and sometimes quietly broken. But even performance has its limits, and the deeper his acts cut, the more personal it all begins to feel. Because long before Patrick Jane worked with the law, one single reckless mistake turned his life into something else entirely. What began as a showman's provocation sparked a private war, a slow, cerebral game between two tethered minds, willing to cross any lines just to see who blinks first. This is the fragile space where the mentalist lives, between performance and obsession, between the truth we chase and the damages it leaves behind. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button and check out my other videos after this one. And now, without further ado, let's explore The Mentalist. Chapter 1: The Ghost and Ethics of Manipulation. Both the CBI and the FBI have relied heavily on Patrick Jane's uncanny observational skills to close complex cases that might have taken months, even years to solve without his involvement. His insights, rooted in acute attention to detail and psychological manipulation, turns investigation into swift operations. And yet, while his talents serve justice, they also blur the line between logic, legality, and morality. And yet Jane's methods are undeniably captivating, but they also often raise this difficult question about ethical boundaries. This duality is part of what makes him such a compelling figure. His brilliance isn't built on traditional law enforcement methods. It thrives on misdirection, psychological manipulation, and a showman's sense of timing. He doesn't just solve crimes, he stages them. Every interrogation and every confrontation becomes theater. But make no mistake, behind the charm, there's control. Behind every smile, calculation. And the most unnerving part? He makes it all look easy. On the other hand, I hold a deep respect for the men and women who protect society through law and procedures. And Jane mucks all that up into a small crumpet of minor inconvenience. Jane doesn't always honor those systems. He bends the rules, sometimes breaks them outright, and crafts elaborate psychological traps that teeters on the edge of manipulation. His use of hypnosis, deception, and social engineering can make him seem more like a magician than a normal investigator. At times it feels like he's orchestrating a performance rather than conducting an inquiry. That's the paradox. He performs, but he delivers. His theatrics, reckless and inappropriate by any other standards, somehow become acceptable because they work. While his inner circle might tolerate the chaos, others often find themselves unwilling participants in the Jane methods. For many, the discomfort goes beyond professional boundaries. Some resent him, others admire him, but most just want to stay out of his radar. Jane treats every situation like a stage, pushing people into emotional corners and exposing vulnerabilities and provoking reactions to get the truth. He strips them of the lies they hide behind, whether they are suspect, witness, or fellow agents. The result is both captivating and cold. It's part performance, part punishment. His methods are unorthodox, even dangerous, but they slice through bureaucracy in a way traditional approaches never could. But beneath the performative layers lies a deeper narrative. Jane didn't start out in law enforcement. Raised among carnival folks, people who traditionally mistrusted authority, he was shaped by a world of illusion and survival. That upbringing makes his current role all the more ironic. He has become the very figure his community would have scorned, and perhaps that's part of the tragedy. His ability to see through deception is born from a life spending perfecting it. His personal trauma adds another layer of complexity. The murder of his wife and daughter by Red John was a consequence of Jane's own arrogance, his decision to taunt a serial killer on live television. It's a wound he carries in silence, though it bleeds into every case he touches. We see a man not just seeking justice, but punishing himself in the process. Through his relentless pursuit of the truth, Jane seems to be searching for something more than answers, perhaps redemption, or maybe just a relief from the guilt. This pain is what humanizes him. For all his charms and brilliance, Jane is a man quietly drowning. Yet instead of letting the weight of grief paralyze him, he weaponizes it. He uses it to connect with others in pain, to call out the lies they tell themselves, and to hold up a mirror to the worst part of humanity. He isn't afraid to confront the darkness, even if it means becoming part of it. And so despite his unfiltered truth-telling, his emotional manipulation, and the collateral damage he sometimes leaves behind, the system keeps him around. Why? Because result speaks louder than protocol? Because in the eyes of the victim, he delivers something that others can't. Closure. Even if it comes at a cost. And if he were ever in their shoes, if he were the one desperate for answers, we'd want Patrick Jane on the case too, even if it means getting hurt in the process. Chapter 2. Faith in the False. When all sense of hope is lost, people tend to believe in things that may or may not be true. Coming from a practical perspective, the notions of psychics, ghosts, and other false narratives that people have come to believe since human existence can yes feel nonsensical, but I am more open-minded, and that sense of balance is what I try to bring in every series I watch and talk about. But what the series showcases is how those who lack the balance can become corrupted into believing in the false thing entirely. Jane, who was once a showman, earning a good living by exploiting false beliefs in people, had to change, not just his acts but his persona as well, after the tragic death of his wife and daughter. He becomes the first to point out that psychics don't exist, and even the small suggestions people might bring up are quickly shut down. However, the unconventional things Jane does often feel unnatural. There's an eerie accuracy in how he reads people, the clever disguises, and the manipulation that leads everyone to the exact moment he knew was coming. It's as if everyone else is walking into a performance only he and his team have the script for. But after all that, he still stays adamant that all he does is cold reading, nothing psychic, nothing more. After watching the many stunts that Jane has pulled in solving cases, why do we get carried away sometimes questioning if Jane is a real psychic? Maybe because deep down, in a way, we want to. Chapter 3. Gradual Revelation of Sin. How much can audiences wait before they want answers? The mystery of who Red John was and the organization he seemed to control has been the longest running enigma any television series could have milked. From the beginning of the series, Red John was introduced as a figure who terrorized California and instilled a pervasive sense of fear in the public. The use of his blood-stained smiley face at every crime scene made it clear that this case wouldn't be a simple case of the week. It signaled a much longer, much complex journey. However, what came as a surprise was how deliberately slow the reveal was. Every Red John-centric episode only deepened the mythos around him. Gradually, it became evident that this was not just a lone serial killer, but the face of a movement, a figure orchestrating chaos from behind the scenes like a grand puppeteer. Each mention of Red John ignited fear, and there are a few in California unfamiliar with his name or what he represented. His cult-like aura transformed into a slow-burning sense of anticipation. The revelation of his crime became less about the acts themselves and more about the corruption and darkness embedded in the system he manipulated. Initially portrayed as a media-obsessed killer, Red John gradually emerged as someone obsessed not just with the killing, but with control. He created an organization that effectively pawned federal agencies in the justice system, gathering loyal followers to serve his needs while nurturing other serial killers along the way. He always stayed one step ahead, somehow knowing things he shouldn't have because he had the power to manipulate everything within his reach. This slow burn approach to storytelling is rare, even by today's standards. A killer who eludes the protagonist for 6 full seasons serves as a relentless hook, reeling in the audience with each passing clue. And when we finally learn that Red John was in fact a small-town sheriff, it's not his identity that resonates. It's the movement he spawned and the legacy of fear and influence he leaves behind. That is what stays with the audience, and with the characters who survived him. Chapter 4. The Shadow of Vengeance. What does vengeance look like, and why do we sometimes feel the need for it? It feels like one of nature's own flaws that humans have to feel like we sometimes own vengeance. The hunt for Red John has shown what true vengeance looks like. It is something that cannot be defined by a single word, but rather a multitude of words that shape Jane's obsession with finding out who Red John is and enacting the kind of vengeance he had envisioned ever since losing his family. Although we know that Jane is the protagonist of the series, with Red John representing his opposite, the line they cross can sometimes blur the moral line. It makes us wonder if this tale is less about good versus evil and more about choosing the lesser evil. Even though Jane is shown doing good solving cases across the board, his tactics from using hypnosis and human manipulation to his consuming obsession with vengeance creates a pivotal question. Who is the real protagonist of the story? Whenever it came to Red John, we witnessed Jane go a little too far, from killing a man in cold blood, burying a suspect alive, to creating chaos with the higher-ups, and even once taunting Red John into killing another serial killer because the CBI couldn't arrest him. His actions consistently pushed the boundaries. These tactics where the ends justifies the means reveals a deeper essence of vengeance. As long as the worst evil is taken care of, You can bend the rules, even cross the lines, because in your eyes, you'll still just be the lesser evil. Chapter 5: The Ending. Patrick Jane has gone through a lot in his life, especially over the course of the series. Now, this isn't supposed to be a single character analysis on his character, but in the end, it kind of has to be in order to analyze the series. After all, the series' title itself refers to Patrick Jane. After the inevitable conclusion of Red John's arc, the question became, what was left to offer in terms of Patrick Jane? The final season and a half explores what happens next when a story concludes and a new chapter begins, which has become a rare commodity in serialized television. We witness a new team in a new location, solving cases much like they did in California. Through that experience, Patrick Jane finally manages to explore what it means to move on from the tragedies that had defined him for so long. He's now free to make the choices he once couldn't, because in a way, he and Red John was tethered in opposite directions. They were essentially one, for as long as they were playing this so-called game. The new environment allows the series to build something from both the new and the consequences of Red John's terror. And now that they are no longer tethered, unexpected things begins to emerge. Great friendships are created, and inevitable love becomes possible. Taking the series full circle, the ending brings Jane to accept the mistakes he made when he lost his wife and daughter. He's willing to go on live television again, pretending to be a psychic to capture a serial killer, not fearing the consequences anymore. He knows he's no longer the arrogant man who once faked clairvoyance, but someone more human, someone who has grown. With this final acceptance of his past, he can now move on. He marries the woman that was always inevitable, Lisbon, knowing that there is a future ahead for them. He is no longer looking back at past mistakes, but instead looking forward to life they will share together. In the end, Patrick Jane's greatest act wasn't solving a case or playing into a game with a serial killer. It was choosing to live again. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you soon in the next review episode.